Aside from the fact that everything I do is immersed in culture in some way, shape, form, or fashion, I also do realize that, like I said before, while we, meaning Black people, people of color, immigrants, etc., consume a lot of content that is focused around white stories, white people don't do as much. I'm not saying you don't do it all. You don't do as much. So last week I saw that The Help was the #1 movie on Netflix, and I kind of lost my mind. And here's why I lost my mind a little bit. The Help is literally a Disney movie about racism. Quite literally. With the movie, at least, a white woman at the center of the story that's supposed to be a story about these Black maids, right? The book is better than the movie, but even the book is still, let's say the book is a gluten-free, salt-free, dairy-free version of what that story would look like if it actually came from a Black writer. And also the author of The Help got sued by her maid for taking her story, but that's another topic. So to see that in a time of unrest and people wanting to learn that their solution was, let me go watch this feel-good movie about racism in the 60s, was upsetting, right? When there's so much other content on Netflix that you could watch. This is similar, well, it's the same, as the reason why there was uproar about The Green Book, which people probably thought was a delightful film, when it was so celebrated at the Oscars. The Green Book was a traveler's guide for Black folks to use as they were driving through the Jim Crow South to find safe places to sleep, to eat, in sundown towns so that they wouldn't find harm, so that they could map out, their drive and know when and where they could stop. And still, here's a movie with a white character at the center. And Black folks are used to this. Movies that are supposed to be our narratives, that are actually like widely appreciated, celebrated, touted, are usually stories about us, but stories about us through a white lens still. So today is about offering you content that is Black stories through a Black lens. Some of it might feel uncomfortable for you to watch. You might feel like you're being intrusive. You're not, but it's also not content that was made with you in mind. And I want you to keep that in mind. There may be inside jokes, remarks, comments you don't understand. You may not know why something's funny, whatever have you, but that's part of the exercise, is for you to view something from a Black perspective. I'm going to probably continue saying this, but today is a starting point. This totally based off my own opinions, what was at the forefront of my mind when I was thinking about this. I have a few suggestions for you in the category of film and TV, and then in the category of books and literature. So with film and TV, there's a straight up feature, and then there's a doc. With books and literature, there's 2 fiction, 2 nonfiction, and then in music, for you to immerse yourself in when you feel comfortable doing so, if you feel comfortable doing so. A starting point, again, and I encourage you to, dig in a little bit more on your own. It may be stuff you haven't watched before, listened to before, read before, because you thought it's not for me. And I know, like I just said, it wasn't necessarily made with you in mind. Doesn't mean it's not for you. It's for all audiences. But again, from a Black perspective. Before we get into TV and film, I first want to advise that these clips have strong language. So please be prepared. But again, part of this is being a little bit uncomfortable. But I didn't want you to get caught off guard with that. And at least one of them has a strong situation. It's hard even for me to watch. But this is not about to be like a grueling exercise, right? So I don't want you to be timid in it. I did just want to warn you that there's some strong language and at least one strong situation ahead. The first movie that I want to look at a little bit, because I'm not just gonna give you a name. We're gonna look at this a little bit. This is how I do what I do. The first movie I want to look at a little bit is Spike Lee's seminal Do the Right Thing, 1989 masterpiece about summer in Bensonhurst, Brooklyn. What's important about Do the Right Thing is that was a hugely tense year in New York City for race relations. The Exonerated Five, formerly known as the Central Park Five, were in the headlines that spring, and then that August there was the killing of a young black man named Yusef Hawkins in the Italian American area of Brooklyn. So this movie was timely then, and it's still timely now.
What? Pina, who's your favorite basketball player?
Magic Johnson.
Who's your favorite movie star?
Eddie Murphy.
Who's your favorite rock star? Prince. You're a Prince fan.
Boss, Bruce.
Prince.
Bruce.
Pina, all you ever talk about is nigga this and nigga that. And all your favorite people are so-called niggas.
It's different. Magic, Eddie, Prince are not niggas. I mean, they're not black. I mean, let me explain myself. They're not really black.
Oh!
Yeah.
You almost knocked me down, man. The word is excuse me.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Not only did you knock me down, by my brand new white Air Jordans that I just bought. And that's all you can say is excuse me.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I'm serious. I'll fuck you up quick 2 times. 2 times. Who told you to step on my sneakers? Who told you to walk on my side of the block? Who told you to be in my neighborhood?
I own this brownstone.
Who told you to buy a brownstone on my block in my neighborhood on my side of the street? Yo, what you want to live in a black neighborhood for anyway, man? Motherfuck gentrification.
Well,
As I understand it, this is a free country. Man can live wherever he wants.
Free country? Man, I should fuck you for saying that stupid shit.
I checked to see if Do the Right Thing is still streaming on Netflix. It's not. Hopefully, by the time we're done tonight, I can point you to where to find it, but I'm sure a simple Google would do the trick as well. I chose that movie not in spite of it being 21 years old to start, but because it's 21 years old, and with just a few slight updates, that movie could drop this summer and still be just as resonant and just as powerful and just as relevant. And I think that's key to some of what Black people express about our experience, that none of this is new. We didn't make it up. We're not imagining it. A lot of these issues have been the same for decades, and I'm going to point to an even older clip about that later on in the next couple of hours. So now we're going to jump ahead a little bit. The next movie I want to look at, I'm just going to do one clip from, because it's a much more difficult piece of content to watch, regardless of whether you're Black or white. It's actually the first time that I'm revisiting the movie in any way, shape, form, or fashion since I've seen it. This one is based on a true story. It's Michael B. Jordan in Fruitvale Station, which follows Oscar Grant, who was killed in the Fruitvale BART station up to the time of his death, completely from his perspective, as he's playing with his daughter, as he's working, leading right up to that night where they were coming home on a train, got pulled off the train after a fight, and he was shot and killed when the officer said that he thought he drew his taser. Again, it's not an easy piece to watch. It's not an easy movie to watch, but it is the reality of so many young Black men in major metropolitan areas who take transit. And of course, when I say that, I don't necessarily mean that the reality of so many young Black men who take, I mean, even though it is, of so many young Black men who take transit is that they end up dead, although who knows how many it is that we don't know about, to be honest. But in terms of being held for no specific reason, harassed by police officers, threatened with arrest, and or arrested and taken in, there's a whole generation of Black men that could talk to you about stop and frisk here in New York, and there's a whole generation, 2 generations of Black men that could talk to you about run-ins with LAPD in LA and then Oakland PD as well. So that's going to be the next thing that we look at, and that's my next suggestion if you are going to delve into cinema to try to educate yourself on what we're currently protesting for and fighting for. I absolutely recommend Fruitvale.
But they can't arrest us, we ain't do shit.
What's that?
I said we ain't do shit. Y'all can't fucking arrest us.
Oh, yeah? Cuff these two assholes. They're going to jail.
But fucking what? You can't arrest him.
How about that?
Get on your knees.
You can't fucking arrest him, man. I'm just trying to get home. No. We ain't trying to go to jail. You feel me? We just trying to get home. We just trying to get home. Be cool,
Well,
man.
maybe you should have thought about that before you started acting like a punk-ass bitch.
Don't call my partner no bitch. Right? Bitch ass nigga, for real.
Did you call me a bitch-ass nigga?
Don't fucking say that.
Bitch-ass nigga? Huh?
Hey, oh, fuck that, man. Hey, man, get off this shit. Ain't do shit. Get off me, I can't get his fucking arm. Roll over. Get over my head, man.
So in the interest of time, I'm going to share one more clip with you. This one's a little bit lighter, with a different direction and selection. And we'll talk about a little bit more, and we'll talk about books when we get on live in a few minutes at 7 o'clock Eastern, which I'm still going to do. But this is Aretha Franklin's Amazing Grace live concert documentary. And this is purely about a Black cultural experience. Even though the audience was mixed, it was largely Black, filmed at a Black church in Watts, with Aretha and the Reverend James Cleveland, who is known as the godfather of contemporary gospel. And it's just the blackest church, like the blackest Black church experience I've ever seen on film. Here's why that's important. For the most part, obviously, Black people are not a monolith, but my point to you is that we all do have certain cultural touchstones that we know and we recognize when we see them. So for the most part, even if you did not grow up in a religious household, even if you didn't go to church every Sunday, there are facets of the Black church experience, of Black church culture. So like, Black church isn't necessarily the same thing as Black religion. Black church is about certain protocol and ceremony and rituals and traditions and behaviors and customs that we all recognize when we see them. You guys might have seen the viral clip last maybe 2 weeks ago of the young man who was on the Disney Channel who was preaching about going to school, going to school online.
874 the re592 is unable to connect, so it's telling me Ramon take her ass. Ramon take her ass. You've been working hard and dedicated, day in and day out, day and night. In the midnight hour, you're hurting your eyes by watching the school, trying to get the education, trying to learn knowledge that you might not even use. But that's okay, because I'm required. Can I get a witness if you say I'm required? Yeah, to watch it. I'm gonna reload the page and we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. Let's see, I'm on lesson 105, and it's playing, and it's playing, and it's playing, and it's playing.
So what God telling you to do your work?
And it's playing. No, he's still telling me to take a break. You see how he paused it?
No, you paused it.
I didn't pause
You
nothing.
paused it. You better do your schoolwork.
I didn't pause it. Oh, no, he just paused it. He just paused it. He just paused it. He just paused it.
I need you to stop putting stuff on God. God didn't pause it. Get over there and do your work.
Mama,
Ramon.
no, I don't want to do the work.
You better do that doggone work.
You know, I don't want to do the work because God is doing the work in me. How am I supposed to be doing work when He's working in me? I need to rest so He has a stable foundation to upgrade on. How, when I'm moving, how am I going to get upgrades? When a car is getting upgraded, it's in a garage and it's standing still.
We all recognized what he was doing. We knew that cadence. We knew the melodic flow that he was using as he was imitating a preacher of a certain sort. So at any rate, as we are preparing to go into our live, I'm going to share a clip before Aretha even comes into the house from Amazing Grace. It's near the beginning, and it's the choir marching in. And the part I want you to take with this is not what they're wearing, because it was the 70s, but their sound and their movement and the call and response of James Cleveland from the pulpit as they march in, as the choir comes forth, as we would say, or as they process. We started with Do the Right Thing, Fruitvale Station, both of which I feel like I brought up because I feel like they are really, really important right now, and to what we are currently protesting, fighting for, defunding police, the over-policing of Black bodies, the lack of actual police community interaction, etc. And then I switched over to Aretha because I also wanted to share for you another side of the Black experience, which is that Black church experience. And I highly encourage you to take a seat and relax and watch the Amazing Grace documentary when you get a chance. Because not only is it Aretha at like her fullest Aretha-ness with her vocals, you also get a chance to see her dad, which explains a lot about her and where she comes from. You get a chance to see her in a church environment, which we just didn't see a whole lot of once she became a star, which is going all the way back to like just the foundation of who Aretha is. And you also get to see a little bit about just how we worship and how we are in church. So I also want to suggest to you on the TV, film, and media side to go back and watch, let me see, wait, hold on, I had a question. Are you worried about oversharing, incurring, and further abuse by white creators? I mean, I'm not giving away any secrets here right now. I'm sharing work that's already been created. This is not me inventing new hashtags. This is not me coming up with any new content. This is me asking you to look at content that's already out there in the world. for your consumption. I also would love to encourage you to go back to the first season of The Jeffersons. And somebody might say, why The Jeffersons? Even though he is a white creator, Norman Lear is kind of responsible for modern Black television. So first with Good Times, just in case you guys didn't know, Good Times was the first sitcom on television that focused around a Black family unit. And I want to say the first married Black mother and father that we saw on television. And The Jeffersons was the first time we even saw middle-class Black people on television, let alone rich Black people on television, right? And without The Jeffersons, we don't get to The Cosby Show. So towards the later seasons, it got a little silly and it was just kind of fluff and whatever. But those first 2 seasons were right in the pocket. Like, George Jefferson was saying the N-word on TV every episode, but within context, right? Slamming doors in people's faces. Like, it's such a discussion about, it's such a fish out of water story, but also a discussion about holding on to your roots while simultaneously trying to assimilate to a culture that doesn't, or to a world that doesn't necessarily trust you or understand you, while you in turn don't trust them and understand them. So that is another recommendation from me, is to go back and watch the first season or the first 2 seasons of The Jeffersons. And also maybe the first season of Good Times. Good Times quickly went south though, because they started centering JJ around it.